they went 1-1 on the weekend, and in one of those games, they set up the number 2 team in the country, Miami University. But on Friday night, their victory was led by junior Aaron McLeod's 2 goals, and they won 5-3 was the final score in that one. And for the beginning of the game, it was really close, and then BSU pulled away at the end, scoring 4 third-period goals. So that's a big deal. If Bemidji can score 4 goals on the second team in the country in the third period, they're going to be a team to watch out for this year.
Yep, Bemidji will be good again this year, as is Miami, I'm sure.
And then for Saturday's game, it was a 3-2 victory for the Miami University Redhawks. For Miami winning that game, they're the number 2 team in the country, and they were expected to play well, and they did. And the Beavers were up in that one. They were up 2-1 late in the second period. And then the Beavers kind of had a meltdown here because it was a power play for Miami because it was a 5-on-3. And then they gave up a goal on that. And then they also gave up a shorthanded goal with less than 5 minutes left in the third. And then that's when Miami took the lead. So it's something that for Bemidji State, they probably need to kind of work on their special teams a little bit because that kind of screwed them in that second game. Because if they would have beat Miami twice, that would have been a huge statement. But it looks like they just kind of let it get away from them.
Yep, it's too bad. But Bemidji State's showing that they're strong this year. And Miami, of course, you have to pay attention to them. They're a number 2 team in the nation right now. So Bemidji State showing they're strong. Moving on to Colorado College, they only had one game this weekend on Saturday, and they played the U.S. under-18 team and won 5-0. That game doesn't go on their record, but it's not much to say about that game. They played the U18 team. Same story with Denver. They played the US 18 team, only won 3-0. So both of those teams, we don't got a lot of info for. Denver and Colorado College, they're both going to be good teams, so just keep a lookout for them.
Yep. And then Michigan Tech got a series sweep against American International. And Friday's game was probably a crazy one to go to if you were a Michigan Tech fan because they won 4-3 off a goal by senior winger Jordan Baker with 59 seconds remaining in regulation. And the crazy thing about that was Michigan Tech went down 3-0 in the first period, and then they didn't score their first goal until late in the second, and then they ended up putting on the rest of the goals in the third period. And it was just a great bounce back game for Jordan Baker, who missed the entire 2010 and 2011 season due to injury. And Saturday night game, Tech also won 3-1. Jacob Johnson for Michigan Tech scored 2 of their goals. And there's kind of some fun trivia here with this one, because for Michigan Tech's been on the weaker side of the WCHA, to be polite.
Yeah, that's safe to say.
And it was their first series sweep since December 19th and 20th of 2008, and those games were against Northern Michigan. And this might be kind of a new team to look out for now because they did just get a sweep, and they have a new coach in Mel Pearson. Of course, American International isn't the top talent either.
American International, one of the best teams in the nation, I've heard. Sarcasm, we love it. Anyways, Minnesota Golden Gophers will move to them. They whooped the Sisters of Sacred Heart both games this weekend, but we'll talk more about the Gophers when we preview them with our coming series. I think they won 9-0 and 6-0.
Yep.
What
so
joke.
they really put the hurt on them, but there's really nothing impressive about that.
Yeah.
Minnesota State splits their series with 17th ranked Rensselaer. Around hockey, everyone calls Rensselaer RPI. So from now on, we're just going to call them RPI. And I'm sure we'll be talking about them in the playoffs and stuff because they're usually a good team. And Friday night was a really impressive game for the Mavericks because they ended up winning 1-0. And the senior defenseman, Cameron, had one lone goal. He had the only goal of the game. But the real story here was Austin Lee, the Minnesota State goaltender. He pitched his first shutout of his career, stopping 36 pucks, including 17 alone in the third period. So that's just a lights out performance for Austin Lee. So it was good for him. Or else it could be bad defense on the Mavericks too. It's hard to tell because we weren't there.
Right.
But Saturday's game did not go as well because they fell 4-1 to RPI, and really. The only goal by the Mavericks in that one was by sophomore John McGinnis, who scored with 12 minutes into the first. and then RPI just took over after that, and it just never went back the other way. But Saturday's goalie was Phil Cook, not Austin Lee, the one that had the shutout the night before. So it's something to see if this was enough for the coach to be like, we're going to start Austin Lee all the time, or to keep splitting time.
You never know with a situation like that. We kind of have a similar situation in Crandall and Kenny Ryder. So you might see them split time, you might not. It just depends on if the coach wants to see who he wants to see and likes his matchups. Moving on to the next team, Nebraska-Omaha was playing in the Mutual of Omaha Stampede tournament and split the games this weekend against Mercyhurst and Colgate. Nebraska-Omaha is the host team every year for this tournament. Friday against Mercyhurst, Omaha exploded to a 5-1 victory, and by the end of the second, the game was pretty much over. The Mavs had a 3-0 lead, and Brock Mumpetit and Bryce Anilowski each had 2 points. Those two players were huge last year for them as well.
And that's a good sign for Nebraska-Omaha. If they can have two guys scoring 2 points that were big for them last year, I mean, it's just putting them out on the right foot right away.
Absolutely. And Saturday against Colgate, the Mavs were stunned by Colgate 4-3. The Mavericks had not lost in this tournament since 2006. It was tied 2-2 at the end of the first period, and it was 4-3 at the end of the second. But Mavericks outshot Raiders 8-5 in the third, but no goals were scored. Again, Nebraska-Omaha is probably going to be an interesting team to watch. They had great success last year, and we'll see if they can match it this year.
Definitely, because last year they really surprised me.
Absolutely.
Yeah, they had a great year. So let's see. They have a lot of their talent back, but let's just see if the nucleus is good enough to have them move on. North Dakota, I guess we have to talk about the Fighting Sioux, I guess. North Dakota split their 2 games this weekend at the annual Icebreaker tournament at the Ralph. So that's the one that they host every single year. And in the game 1, they beat Air Force 4-3. And the impressive thing about this is that the Sioux were down 2-3 in the third period, but ended up winning 4-3. And both of those goals in the third period came from the sophomore from War Road, Minnesota, Brock Nelson. So, I mean, he had a great individual performance, and the team came back too. And then on Saturday, this is a little more comforting for everyone else in the WCHA. It was a 6-2 loss for the Sioux against the Boston College Eagles. And I mean, after the Eagles won that game, they attained the number 1 rank in the country. So, I mean, they're a very, very good team, Boston College is, every single year. Yeah, and kind of the story of that game was the Sioux were up 2-1, and then Boston College just exploded and scored 4 unanswered goals in the second period. And after that, it was all over pretty much. Like we're saying, I mean, North Dakota losing 6-2 to Boston College, it's a statement, but it does not mean they're a weak team at all, because Boston College is a very, very talented hockey team.
Yeah, both teams we look forward to looking at throughout the year. North Dakota, we'll see them, and Boston College, hopefully we'll see them in the championship or something like that.
Yeah.
We never know. Yeah. All right, moving on to Wisconsin. They split their series against Northern Michigan. Each game was decided by 1 goal. What's that say about Wisconsin? They're playing Northern Michigan. Not historically a great team. Friday's game was a shocker at the Kohl Center. The Badgers were up 2-0 with 8 minutes left in regulation and lost in overtime to Northern Michigan. They came with 3.7 seconds left in overtime, too, so it almost went to a tie.
Yeah, and that's awesome, too, that it almost went to a tie, and then they scored to beat Wisconsin with less than 4 seconds left at home. That's just a great thing.
Gorgeous. Eagan, Minnesota native freshman Joe LeBate scored his first career goal in the second period. Just a little note there. Saturday's game was won 3-2 by the Badgers. Badgers were down 2-0 with less than 10 minutes left in the third and squeaked out with a win. Wisconsin looks as if they either playing really well at the end of the games or falling apart. You never know with Wisconsin, a little inconsistent for the first weekend. So it's interesting to watch them play out the season and see what they can really do. I mean, if they're splitting with Northern Michigan and they look a little shaky at the end of the games, who knows? So
now we're going to go and do our part of the show, like the Minnesota Gophers preview, because I'm sure that's what all you guys want to hear about, because that's what's coming up this upcoming weekend here. And just kind of a little overall history for the game. For the series, the teams have played 216 times in school histories, and the Gophers are leading the series 129, 72, and 15. And for last season in Minneapolis, we lost 1 and then tied 1. And then when the Gophers came up here to Amsoil, we tied 1 and then won 1. So last year it was 1, 1, and 2. And I don't know, just this year, it's just, I mean, any year that the Gophers come up, it's always a big series. It's usually the most anticipated series of the year up here in Duluth. And I always look forward to it, and it's always a lot of excitement, and it's a ton of fun.
Absolutely. I think one of the things we need to look forward to, we need to start scoring goals in our power plays. To play well special teams, not get into too much penalty trouble. The Gophers obviously have a good team, and they have had a good team the past few years. They just haven't shown it as well. I don't know if it's team chemistry or coaching or what, but the Gophers have always had great recruits. Just haven't been able to put up the wins past couple of years, which we don't mind up here in Duluth because we're winning.
Oh yeah, of course not. And I mean that way too. Like they do have really talented, and I mean like two people that are probably really going to come on this year are Nick Bugstead, that big forward from Blaine. I mean he's good.
It's huge.
He's really good, and then Mark Alt too. I mean he hasn't played much for the Gophers, but he's going to be pretty good too. Mm-hmm. So it's just kind of it'll just be interesting to see how it plays out. Yeah, I mean, it'd be nice to get a statement here and just get a sweep because that would just kind of open things up for us. But I just wonder, too, if we're going to start Ryder both nights or probably still split time with him and Crandall.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll see how the first night goes with Ryder or Crandall, whoever they decide to start. I think there's a chance that they'll split, but I mean, I think there's a chance that they'll split goalies, not the series, obviously. It's the coach's decision ultimately to see what happens, but I think they're both solid goaltenders. Crandall was 10-3 last year in all games, so he's a solid goalie as well. Just kind of, I don't know what happened in the last part of the Notre Dame game, but going back to Bukestad and Alt and the Gophers, they're going to be a great team this year. We'll see if they are a little shaky coming off a series against Sacred Heart, who just sounds like a throwaway game. So we'll see if they're still relaxed from playing Sacred Heart and if they're ready to play us, the big Bulldogs up here at UMD.
Definitely. It'll definitely be a different atmosphere for them coming up to play the defending champs because, like you said, that Sacred Heart game, so we honestly have hardly any, we don't really know, besides them having a lot of size and talent, we don't know how well they play together or if they're doing any new schemes or anything because them playing Sacred Heart doesn't show anything, and we just haven't been able to see them play at all this year because it's only it's the second game now.
Mm-hmm. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. I think the Bulldogs probably squeak out at least one game, probably two against the Gophers. Gophers have been struggling these past couple of years, like I've been saying, so we'll see what happens. I think the B-Dogs pull out a couple wins this weekend, and that'd be great for us in the WCHA and great in national standings as well.
Most definitely, because that would definitely make our ranking go up. And now, just to kind of wrap some things up or whatever, we're going to talk about some other UMD sports quick. UMD football this past weekend, they won a tough game in Winona State. It was at night. It was Winona State's homecoming, and they won 24-6. So now the Bulldogs moved to 5-1 overall and 4-1 in the Northern Sun Interscholastic Conference, and they just retained their same rank of number 9, which is kind of cool because now the hockey team and the football team are number 9, but hopefully they can move up and get to a higher ranking.
Right.
And right now they're still one game behind the NSIC leading team, and that's the only team that has beaten them this year is Wayne State. So, but just some shout-outs during the game. Freshman running back Austin Sikorsky had a great 104-yard rushing performance and tacked on a touchdown. And then shout-outs to strong safety Cody Ike and cornerback Kenny Chawa for getting interceptions. And I'm thinking if the team wins out, they will for sure.
Oh, yeah. They'll make the tournament.
They'll definitely make the tournament. And they don't have a lot of tough tasks left ahead of them. I think they've had the hardest ones. They've already played them.
All right, moving on to UMD volleyball. They won their 19th straight game against St. Cloud State on Tuesday night. Had the Dig for the Cure going on. It was very inspirational to see all the students and a lot of the community out there. It was the most people I've ever seen in a volleyball game here at UMD. A lot of sport. They went 3 games in 0, and they took it to St. Cloud. They also beat Bemidji State this last weekend to go 18-0. So they're now 19-0 and 10-0 in the conference, and they're ranked 4 right now. And keep up the great work, Jim Booz and the UMD Bulldogs. Hannah Johnson had a great game again up front for the Bulldogs.
And just some news in other parts of the sporting world. The Vikings won last week, which is awesome. 3 first-quarter touchdowns by Adrian Peterson.
Woohoo!
Hopefully he can keep that up in the game Sunday night against the Bears, because that's a big division matchup. And the Wild on Tuesday night lost. They lost in a shootout or whatever. And then after that, the Lynx had their parade for winning the WNBA championships. Go Lynx. And yeah, the NBA lockout, it's still happening right now. The first 2 weeks are done, so let's hope those guys can get back on the court sometime.
And remember, the men's Bulldog hockey team will be playing the Minnesota Golden Gophers on Friday in Saturday night at Amsoil Arena here in Duluth. And that wraps it up for the show in this edition of Maroon Loon. Thank you for listening, and remember to tune back in at 9 p.m. next Thursday night on 103.3 KUMD.